Let's bring in my first guest here. You know him well, former White House Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor at Bondi Partners, Mick Mulvaney. Mick, thanks so much for coming on the program this week. Wanted to start out by talking about what is going on with Venezuela. There has been a seizure of a tanker with, I think, 1.6 million barrels of oil. This is a big escalation, as I was speaking about at the beginning of the program, from just going after those drug-running boats. Here's a little bit of what Donald Trump had to say about this seizure.
We've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, a large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later.
Thank you. Can you explain a little more about this Venezuelan oil tanker and share a little more information?
Well, I'll let the people do it, but you see the result, and I guess they probably have released the pictures by now, or pretty soon. You'll discuss that with the appropriate people later on, but no, it was seized for a very good reason.
So I don't know, Mick, I was kind of hoping the president would do a little, I am the captain now kind of routine here about this. He didn't. But tell me, what is going on here? What is this bigger strategy? Is it to topple Maduro? Is it to create a new Monroe Doctrine and get Russia and China out of the hemisphere? Is it about cutting off oil supplies to these dictatorships? A combination of all three. Walk us through it.
Yeah, James, I would if I could. But the short answer to your question is, I have no idea. And if you believe some of the media reports in this country, and of course you always have to take those with a grain of salt, not that many other people do either, that many Republicans on the Hill are saying they don't know what the plan is, that no one in the White House is telling them anything. I don't get it. And how often do I come on this program and defend what the administration is doing? But I don't get this one. Keep in mind, if it's because the Maduro regime is oppressive, and they are, and they're horrible, and I get that. That's great, except they were doing that in 2017, 18, and 19 when Donald Trump affirmatively fought recommendations from his advisors to start a war with Venezuela. If it's about the drugs, that existed 8 years ago as well. So I'm not sure what has changed. If it's Marco Rubio, I don't know if John Bolton is running foreign policy from a bunker someplace. I really don't get this one. And how often do you hear me say that?
Well, exactly right, Mick. It is a bit of a puzzle, particularly given that he spent, his entire reason for being a politician and president has been, no more stupid wars, no more getting involved with other countries' affairs. Are Trump voters, and we got to talk about the midterms and where we're heading into this in less than a year's time now, are Trump voters going to be on board with this kind of action?
I think voters are going to give him some slack. There's no question. Obviously, there's the true hardcore Trump voters who don't care. They'll vote for him anytime. But those independent voters and sort of those marginal Trump voters, those voters that Republicans need in the midterms, are going to give him a little bit of time. Keep in mind, he's built up a tremendous amount of political capital back home for what he's done in Gaza, what he's done overseas, especially for the attack on the Iranians and so forth. I think if he can make the case that this is sort of the Latin American version of the attack on Iran, he's got a chance to actually turn this into a positive, and that may be the plan. Maybe a little what we call tomahawk diplomacy. You lob a couple cruise missiles, and that's about it. But if he gets bogged down with American troops on the ground in Venezuela, then your question comes straight to the forefront, which is what's changed? He didn't run on starting wars. In fact, he ran on ending them. So why are they doing that if that's where we go? Again, it's way too early to make any conclusions, obviously, about what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen. I will tell you this, James. I was talking to a friend of mine who's ex-military, fairly high up, and I asked him what he thought. He said, you don't bring an aircraft carrier 20 miles offshore and not use it. And I thought that was a very interesting insight.
Yeah, no, it's a Chekhov's aircraft carrier, I think is what they call it in the English studies departments. But is this maybe what we're looking at is potentially is Reagan the model here? And I'm thinking of when Ronald Reagan gave a series of short, sharp punches to Muammar Gaddafi in Libya and essentially put that terrorist country into its box without having to do any of the sort of regime change that we later saw after 9/11.
That's absolutely possible. And look, if that happens again, draw the comparisons to what happened in Iran. It was a quick hit. It was a decisive hit. There was a once-in-a-generational chance to do that. So maybe that's what the Trump team is looking at here. And if that's what they do, then I think politically they'll be fine, and it may have dramatic improvements in our relations. Excuse me, with our drug situation here. So there's potential for a great deal of good, but you're asking the right questions, which is why is Donald Trump, talking about land operations for the American military in Venezuela? And I don't think anybody other than Donald Trump knows the answer to that question right now.
Well, we wait and see. Hey, just on another big policy issue, we obviously have been waiting to see what the effects of the Liberation Day tariffs would be. There's just been some breaking news in the last few hours saying that the trade deficit in the United States has narrowed to its smallest level since mid-2020, down more than 35% of the last year. Now, some people are saying that this is proof that the America First trade agenda is working. Are people feeling this in America? And obviously, there's going to be a much longer lag before local manufacturing starts to take up some of that slack. Is that being taken up by higher prices?
Yeah, as is so often the case with a snapshot piece of economic data, you can read a bunch of different things into it. There's some really good news here on its face, which is exports are up about 3% year over year. That's a pretty good jump on U.S. exports. And to your point, we haven't even had the time yet to sort of ramp up domestic manufacturing to take advantage of some of the trade barrier walls that have gone up. So that's good news. Of course, if you want to look at the other side of the equation, I think it's right to ask, okay, why have people been buying less stuff overseas? It's because it's more expensive because of the tariffs. Okay, that's fine. Have they been able to find stuff domestically that they want for a good price as well? That doesn't show up in the trade balance. If I bought a Toyota from Japan, that shows up in the trade balance. If I don't buy a Toyota and I go buy a GM, that doesn't show up in the trade balance. But if I don't buy a Toyota and I don't buy a car, then that's a different story entirely. So a lot of the questions are going to come out in the next couple of months as to what's the real meaning behind this data. Is it because of the tariffs, or is it because the economy is slowing? So again, some really good news here for the Trump team, and some information that makes you sort of say, well, okay, let's wait and see what the next couple of months look like before we jump to too many conclusions.
Yeah. Hey, Mick, also wanted to ask about this piece here that was in the New York Times this week. I kind of had a laugh of it. It was a truly delusional piece of the New York Times featuring Kamala Harris being interviewed about her 2028 political intentions and much, much more. And among other things, she called herself a historic figure and boasted that there would be a statue of her on Capitol Hill. Is this part of some sort of effort to maybe get her up again in some capacity in 2028, or are we just pandering on to the great ego of Kamala Harris?
I think there's a lot of ego in this. Granted, that she's not the only politician with a tremendous ego. You sort of have to have it to get into the business. But I have no idea what the former vice president is doing. By the way, the statue is real. Anytime you've been in the Senate and you end up being the vice president, you get a statue. That's just the way I could take you through the building right now, and everybody who checks those two boxes, vice president and in the Senate, gets a statue. So yes, she gets a statue automatically. But this woman's political career is over, so I'm not really sure what the New York Times is doing. I mean, she's probably going to sell more books than she could get votes. What people forget, James, and you remember this, and what I think the New York Times forgot in this piece, Kamala Harris is a terrible campaigner. In 2016, she ran for president of the United States. She ran in the Democrat primary. She had to drop out of the race before the Iowa caucuses. And for folks who don't follow American politics that closely, that's the first race. So when you drop out of the campaign before the first race, that means you weren't doing too well. And then, of course, she got waxed by Donald Trump just last year. So she's got a long history of doing very, very poorly running for president. I have to believe that her political career is over, that Democrats want her political career to be over, but for some reason she's on the front page of the New York Times, so go figure.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mick, I am maxing out my donations to the Kamala Harris 2028 PAC and writing it off as a business expense. I would love her to run because I think it would be so much fun here on the U.S. Report. But, Mick, thank you so much, as always, for your insights. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Ed.